Okay, so this is my composting area. It's a lot bigger than many people will need, but it's because I'm a gardener, I end up with everybody's waste if they don't want to compost themselves. So this is about 1 metre by metre by metre. And because I'm doing everybody's compost, I end up filling it. This is where I put my newest compost. And then when I turn it into this bin. When I turn it again, I turn it into that bin. And when it's ready to use, usually there's a bin there, but I've moved it at the moment. Usually there's one of those Dalek bins. This I'll talk to you about later. This is a hot bin. We were really lucky to get these compost bins made specially by a friend of ours called Julian Wilson, who sadly has passed away now. But I remember him every time I do these compost bins with a lot of thanks. So the advantage of these is that A, they can fit into exactly where I want them to, and B, I can take these out because they slot in here so that as I go down the compost, I can reach it easily, and as I fill it up, I can put more of the edges in. Some people have ones which you can also remove in between the compost bins, which makes it easier to transfer the compost when you are mixing it. So this compost has been rotting down for a couple of months, and I'm going to turn it now into this bin. And the advantage of this is that if there's any places where the air pockets have got squeezed out, it allows that to get the air in again and to start the breaking down using air. If there's too few air spaces, your compost will become smelly. So it's a good idea to turn it over, and then it mixes everything up and puts more air in at the same time. So that's what I'm going to do today. So all it is literally chucking it from one bin into another. And in doing that, it'll free up any places where stuff is stuck together and allow the air in. And it also then gives me room to put new compost in, because at this time of year, which is the autumn, you're finding that you might be getting a bit short of compost space, because if you're cutting stuff down, then it'll all be going in the compost, hopefully. I'll just even it out a bit in there. So if you have a look at that, you can see that the middle bits are starting to break down. The bits at the edge, which are the cooler bits, they're not breaking down as much. So the other thing you can do is to put them closer to the middle when you turn it. So that can go in the middle, and the stuff that's already more broken down can go around it. This is quite a messy process, and you need to have quite a lot of energy when you do it, but you don't have to do it fast. If you have lung problems, or if you have broken skin, you should protect yourself. So if you've got lung problems, it's a good idea to wear a mask if you're doing this. If you've got broken skin, it's a good idea to wear gloves. Easy. And as you go further down, it gets heavier because it's started to break down more, and those bits, see Daisy, more material is squeezed into each bit of space, so it's heavier. So the advantage again, with these bins is that I can remove the edges from one bin as I need to get further down, and put it on another bin as I fill it up. In fact, I'm going to take this one off as well, give a bit better access. So you can see this is nowhere near broken down, but it isn't brand new stuff either. And this is just a normal fork. I was using a hay fork before. This is just a normal fork now. Now I shouldn't have any pockets in here where any grass is stuck together too much or anything like that, because if I have, then that stuff takes a lot longer to break down. You need the air to help break this down. On average, from beginning to end with compost, to get good quality compost, it'll take a year. That does depend a lot on what you put in your compost and also how big your compost heap is. The bigger the compost heap, the quicker it composts, because you build up more heat in a bigger compost heap. So it's an advantage if you can get more compost, but if you can't, then you can still make compost, even if you only have a little heap. So if you turn it after a few months, if possible, and it's not exact, it's not an exact science. I mean, I'm turning it now because I need the room as much as anything. Then that too helps with speeding it up. Now, another way of speeding up things breaking down is to add nitrogen, and two good ways of doing that, two good and cheap ways of doing that, is that grass is full of nitrogen. So as long as you add it bit by bit, grass is good at helping things speed up. And also, you've probably heard this said before, if you wee in your compost heap, that also helps it speed up. Now, if you don't want to do either of those, you can buy things that help, that you can add to your compost heap, but that's expense that you really don't need to be doing. Now, if you look here, you will see that the edge there is still not broken down. Middle bit is more broken down. So again, I'm going to put the edge bit in the middle, and that should then break down a bit more. There we go. That goes in the middle, and the more broken down bits go at the edge. And as you go lower down, you'll see it's more and more broken down, because that bit's been rotting down for the longest. And also, that bit's closest to the soil, which contains a lot of the bacteria that are needed to help break stuff down. And the worms that also break it down and help mix things. So like I say, as I go down, it just gets heavier and heavier and more broken down. So again, I'll stick another one of these in. I'll build it up a bit more and stop it falling out. I probably would turn this now after, like I say, after a few months of having it in there, up to 6 months. And then I would turn it again after about another 3 months or so. But it's not possible to be exact because everything breaks down at different rates. The main turn, I would say, is the first turn, which is from this bin that I'm doing now, which is the bin that has the newest stuff in, into the next one, while it's still breaking down a lot. After that, you can turn it again, and I usually do, but it's not as critical, I think, for introducing the air as it's breaking down during its initial stages and heating up during its initial stages, because most of the heat is produced in this first bin when that's breaking down. And you'll find when you when you cut a lawn, if you leave the lawn clippings in a bag, later that day it will probably have heated up quite a lot. And that's when you want it to be in your compost heap, and you want it to be breaking stuff down, because that heat helps drive the process of breaking it all down. And it may be that you only have room for one compost bin, and so you can't take it from one compost bin and put it into another. And if that's the case, that's also fine, but it is a good idea to do this and just put your fork in and mix it up. Even if you can't put it into another bin, at least you've given it a mix. So you can get something like this, which can be helpful for if you've got one of these Dalek bins especially, and if you've only got one bin. And basically you plunge that into the compost, like so, and then as you pull it up, the wings of that bit at the bottom come out and help to lift and mix the compost. The issue I find with that is that although that's quite successful, it's very heavy. If you've got a lot of compost and it gets caught on those wings, it becomes very heavy to lift, and you're lifting at quite a high level. I personally find it easier to mix with a fork, but that is something that you can use. And again, as I will say in other videos, I always leave a little bit of this at the bottom, because that bottom bit is like a starter for the next lot of compost. It has bacteria, it has worms, it has fungi that are needed for the breakdown process. So it helps to just leave a little bit in the bottom. The other thing is that if you have a chance, it's a good idea to have a compost bin that actually goes against the soil, because then you've immediately got contact with the stuff that starts to break the compost down.
Don't forget, like, comment, share and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.